Carson, Leno, Fallon. Now, it's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in a away game today up in the Napa Valley, about to have a conversation with John Wilkinson. What do they call you? CEO? Founder? What?
Managing partner.
Managing partner of Bin to Bottle, all things custom crush and more. We're going to talk about that in a second. Have a listen to a podcast with Jess Hirschfield, and you will find out what is going on in the world of canned wines. We're going to talk about that today as well. But not why we're here today. We're here to have some fun and talk Bin to Bottle, because I was hanging my shingle here for a while. You know, we were what was the name of the company? I forgot my own name.
I don't remember either.
But we made wine up here for a while.
What was the brand?
The one brand I bottled was called Human Condition. It was a Mendocino Cabernet, and we brought the grapes in. But anyway, it's not just for jogging my memory. You are you're one of the founding members of Bin to Bottle.
I was,
now the managing partner. You know, for the listeners, would you call this Custom Crush?
Yeah, I think primarily, and we can, by the way.
Okay, let's do that.
We do have two canning lines.
Oh, that's what I want to talk about too, because that's interesting.
I mean, I was making wine at home. We put a vineyard in '98. I was making wine at home. Couldn't control temperatures. Started asking my friends where they're making wine, and everybody was unhappy. I couldn't talk to anybody that was a Custom Crush that was having a good experience.
Wow.
And I thought, well, how could, in 2004, could a market be so underserved? So I started looking into it. The building that I own next door had a brewery permit, thought about converting it to a winery, but you know, I was a guy making wine at home. I didn't have any gravitas to start making, who's going to bring me their grapes when this guy's making a little, 2 tons at home. So I brought in some partners and we developed Bin to Bottle.
So this is fascinating. First of all, 2004, which is a huge glut year, right? I know Napa, certainly in El Paso it was.
5 was the big year.
5 was the big
and
one.
And we were unfortunately not open. We were
weren't
building.
ready yet.
Yeah, we opened in 06.
But the idea of Custom Crush, which is, for the listeners, the idea that if I wanted to start a brand, which we did have one here, but I actually had a TTB license. But if I just wanted to create a brand, well, let me use a real scenario. A friend started a brand called Screeching Peacock, because I don't think he made it here. One of the other crushes,
not to be confused with.
Well, we live in Arcadia, so there's lots of peacocks around. But they don't have a license to make wine. They don't have even a license to sell it. So how does that work?
Well, so we are decidedly not a Custom Crush winery for hobbyists. And there are some. So There was a place in town in San Francisco actually called Crush Pad that was exactly what you described, which was who would like to make some wine. And they actually took care of, on the compliance side, all the permits so that you could actually sell your wine. But most people there would make 1 or 2 barrels of wine. They'd share it with friends, give it to friends, and what's amongst a few dollars? What's wrong with a few dollars amongst friends, right? As long as it's not being distributed out in the open market.
Right.
Here, from the very beginning, even our very first clients were all commercially in the wine business. They had distribution, they were making wine and selling it, and they ran either under an AP, an alternating proprietorship, or there's all these licenses that are made by numbers, 17, 20, and so forth. And there's varying ways you can sell wine. But ultimately, it's a controlled substance, so you have to have background checks and so forth.
Controlled substance, alcohol, man.
Yes, exactly. But really, we are a winery for established brands. I mean, we made The Prisoner for 15 years.
Oh, okay. Wow.
We made Oliver and Swift's wines for 15 years. So, big, large brands have been made here. We made lots of wines for lots of brands you've been drinking for years.
I think you said something interesting. The alternating proprietorship, which for the listeners is a way to own a license through the federal government as well as the California ABC, and hang your shingle much like a hairstylist, a salon would hang their shingle at a place. But do you have an idea what percentage of wine you think is made
under AP here in terms of
the world? I mean,
in terms of volume? Not even 10%, because our larger clients don't have APs. One of the main benefits of an AP is that if you're at a large winery, you get something called a small producer's tax credit with an AP, because now all of a sudden you have your own O2, which is the designation for a winery.
California.
And if you're under my O2, we're a big winery, so wine sold under an O2 that I hold would be larger because of our volume. But if you're making 600 cases and you have your own O2, all of a sudden you get a small producer's tax credit and the rates are much lower. So that's the main benefit. There used to be other benefits of having an O2, including where you could pour at charity auctions and where you were allowed to. A lot of that has gone by the wayside, and it's less of an issue.
Since we have our CPA here in the audience, I don't know if she knows about this tax benefit that we probably didn't take advantage of.
That was really one of the main benefits of having an O2. Here's the funny thing. With an O2, the idea is you're alternating the premises. So under the TTB rules, you're in that facility and you're making your own wine. Well, most wineries, it's like too many cooks in the kitchen. We don't want clients driving forklifts and, imagine the workers' compensation claims and everything else if we had people that own their brands here truly climbing stacks and driving forklifts and putting their hands in augers and whatever. So it's they have an O2, but we do the work.
Right.
They're very involved. They give us the protocols and they oversee the work and so forth. But ultimately, they're looking to us as a bricks and mortar facility with talented people and experienced people to make their wine for them.
So I don't have to have an AP. I can come to you and say, hey, John, listen, I got this idea. I got an amazing. I'm going to set the world on fire, the world of wine. I've got the best idea that ever happened. Yeah. Which, by the way, the Wine of the Month Club, my old company, which I just recently sold, made a living out of finding these busted business ventures.
There is no question our business had a lot of people. What's the old joke about the wine business?
Yes.
How do you make a lot of
a
small fortune in the wine business? Start with a large fortune. There were plenty of people that came here at the beginning that would hire a very fancy vineyard manager, a very fancy winemaker. And when I say fancy, six figures salaries and wages for these people so they could sell their wine for $200, $300, $400 a bottle. But that's not a sustainable business, and there, as we all know, there aren't that many wines that sell that way. So and by the way, the days of wealthy people hiring fancy winemakers and things, those days they're more than dwindled. They're almost non-existent. It's not
that's
zero,
an interesting thought.
But that's never was our business. We wanted to be in business with sustainable brands that had distribution with professionals that knew how to sell wine. The making of the wine is easy. Converting sugar to alcohol is just not that hard. It's the only time winemaking gets hard is when you make mistakes. If you can do error-free work, winemaking isn't that difficult. So selling of it is hard.
Tell me how far off I am when I tell people, look, the technology of making wine hasn't changed like in 12,000 years.
Completely true.
It's just exactly what it is.
Completely true.
You said something really interesting because I was a moderator on a show for USC Business School, Fight On Trojans, and I was in between two guys. One of them I knew well because he was a fraternity brother of mine, but this was business. So he owns Hammer Sky Vineyards in Paso.
Okay.
He owns everything. He owns the wedding chapel and the forklifts and the plows and everything.
Of course.
And then the guy next to me on the other side was just what you talked about. Had a lot of money, wanted to get into business, was buying the best grapes he could find, hiring the best vineyard managers and winemakers, and somewhere around $200 a bottle. And so I had this audience, and I said, I couldn't say this, right? But the concept is who's going to be successful? This guy's got all this money invested, which he's got to get back, and the margins suck, as we know. And this guy who has nothing.
Margins aren't bad at $200 a bottle.
Well, yes, at that point. And this guy who's got to. And the problem is exactly what you said. He has to market this stuff.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of these guys guys and gals didn't realize, that the making it, you get a great review and the wine sells itself. No, it doesn't work that way. A good review helps, but that's not how you sell your wine. We have clients like, and he's retired now, but a guy named Jonathan Pay who owned Textbook, which he since sold.
Oh, yeah, right.
Textbook, solid brand. And Jonathan's business was selling wine. He knew how to move wine. So his brand did very, very well. And he had a liquidity event and sold the business where, I don't know where they're at now, but, this is a 50,000 case plus brand. And, he understood distribution and how to move wine. And, Textbook's story really was, nice Napa Valley Bordeaux varietals at a fair price, $35 a bottle. He knew how to buy grapes at the right price, and we gave him a good deal, and it all worked beautifully.
So we really get deep into this because this is really fascinating stuff. Because I just had a vendor who used to sell me wine, who's got his own brand, call me and say, "What am I going to do? Southern Wines and Spirits is not paying any attention to me at all." Right? And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is the problem, right?
Well, no one's ever heard that before.
Yeah, that's first time today. Anyway, but you were a hobbyist. You were making wine for fun. What was that attraction about? And then you decided to, jump into 2 feet.
You know what? It's you guys are from LA, so I think I went to school for hotels and restaurants and been drinking wine. I was a consumer of wine for a long time. We accidentally moved to Napa in '92 to get out of the fog of San Francisco. Literally, it was an experiment, total experiment. We're still in the same home. It's been through a few iterations.
Pretty long experience.
But we're still in the same home. And it's a little like being in Hollywood and not being in the entertainment business. I can't imagine being in LA and owning a dry cleaner. I think I'd feel out of it.
Right.
If I were living in LA, I'd want to somehow be involved in entertainment. In Napa, it's kind of the same. If you're up here and somehow not involved in the wine business, you're a little out of it.
Yeah.
So we put in a vineyard in '98. We had the land and just started enjoying the process of making wine and learning the process of making wine. But I'm an entrepreneur. I've owned multiple businesses in multiple silos, and just saw an opportunity. Never expected it to turn into an operation with 100,000 square feet of buildings on a 7-acre, campus, and with, over 100 clients, et cetera. That was never expected. It was going to be a small little custom crush business. It just turned into something bigger.
But you were just having fun. You planned
For sure.
I mean, it's not fun sometimes when you have to start making money at it.
I didn't have to make money at it.
So that's the problem.
That's right. I was making enough wine. We planted, we must have had 1,600 vines. So couldn't drink it all. So I had to be very generous in our giveaways. But it was fun. And we would donate to our school charity auctions, and we would give it to friends, and we would ship it to relatives, and we would drink plenty of it.
Was it any good?
Yeah, it absolutely was.
I've tasted a lot of those.
It was because I had a very good teacher, and it was I would buy a little bit of Cab, and I grew mostly Merlot and a little bit of Syrah, and so it was a little bit of a Merlot. It was a Merlot Syrah blend, really, like 85-15 with just a hint of Cabernet, about 5 or 10%. So,
well, you're just messing up everybody's formulas of Merlot and Syrah. Is like Australian kind of thing, and then your Napa.
But now you see Cab Merlot Syrah blends all the time. At the time, I'm in Oak Knoll, so I wanted to plant what grows best here, and I had somebody who's very good, understood land and soils and temperature, and said, "You don't plant Cabernet in Oak Knoll." Now, not everyone agrees with that. But
I've seen many Oak Knoll Cabernets over the years.
But Syrah, Petite Syrah, I actually budded over the Merlot vineyard eventually. Phylloxera, leaf roll, eventually got it, and we're now budded over to Petite Syrah, and we started with rootstock and then budded over, and I'm in my seventh leaf.
Congratulations!
And we're also just drinking and sharing. We're not selling any of it.
That's interesting. It was a while ago now, but I had a nurseryman on the show, and we went through the process of he comes out and checks the soil, does some other tests, and decides, okay, these are the varietals that are going to do better here. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? You just transplant varietals whenever you feel like it willy-nilly, or do you guide people into this idea of make sure?
We don't.
You don't do it.
We don't. But it's funny, when your kids go to school here in Napa, you meet all these other people in the wine business. And so I just got lucky and met great winemakers and great vineyard managers that understand Napa very well. And they've been working for KJ and for all these big companies and very studied in the art of planting and both spatial and spacing and soils and so forth. And where I am, loamy soil, there's certain varietals that do better. I love Petite Syrah, so I was happy to bud over to that.
These are great. You think that's important? You brought it up earlier, and I want to dovetail off of that and then talk about the importance of understanding the molecular exchange and the biological exchange. And we all know that's so important for the terroir, but for the consumer, is that necessary? But you talked about the pedigreed winemaker. What do you think there are? 5,000, 7,000 winemakers in California? Something like that, right?
There's a lot of winemakers. I will tell you, we're always looking, whether it's through people looking for a new opportunity or whatever, we're hiring all the time. And looking for accounting people right now, really hard. Yeah, Sandra, I'm going to steal her away.
She knows.
Accounting people, really hard. Winemakers, not particularly hard to find a winemaker right now.
So what's the difference? Passion, education. Here's a question that I brought up for the first time because I think it's important for winemakers to, for instance, experience a harvest in South Africa or South America or France and then come to the thing. But then there's the vineyard manager, the winemaker, who's at the same place for 20 years. And Michel Roland has told many people over the years that I've spoken with that, this vineyard's great, but we're not going to know really for another 100 years, what it can do, right? And that only comes from repetitive winemaking.
Yeah.
So if you took the same grapes from the same vineyard, but you gave it to one winemaker who'd been making grapes for 20 years on that vineyard, and one that's traveled the world, and this is their first or third or fourth vintage with that, you get two different wines, right?
I'll tell you a great story. Second year, and by the way, my assistant director or winemaker, she went to Davis and I think didn't join us. She's actually related to one of my partners. She didn't come back to California for 5 years after she graduated. She's been Chile, Argentina, Portugal, France. So she's been all over, and so she's got a body of experience. But we had two people, two very well-known winemakers. I'm not going to say their names.
No, that's right.
And both brought in Tokalon, Beckstoffer Tokalon, on the same day, same block, everything about it the same sugar, the same fruit. One of the people had a very laissez-faire approach to winemaking and just kind of wanted the vineyard to speak. And the other winemaker really wanted to put his stamp on it. And the one who put his stamp on it believed in much higher fermentation temperatures and believed in way more pump overs and acidulation and all sorts of things. The other guy, cold soaked for 3 days, lit up meaning inoculated, 3 or 4 days later, 80-degree ferment, 82-degree ferment, finished in 10 days. Same fruit, completely different winemaking. The wines could not have been more different. And the one that was the laissez-faire approach was way better than the one that went crazy.
That's an interesting thought because we were in Armenia. We're going back, actually. I had incredible conversations with, I think, some of the brightest people in the wine world, not just Armenia, one in particular. And we were talking about that. Like, there's a grape in Armenia called Areni. It's the indigenous grape. I don't think it's a world-class grape. It's Vitis vinifera. It's great. In my opinion, it doesn't like oak, but they all want to put it in oak.
Isn't that funny?
They haven't learned it doesn't like it. And finally, this guy agreed. He goes, "You're right. It doesn't like oak. There's other grapes we have that like oak, but this doesn't like oak."
Yeah.
And so, what's your take on it? You said that you preferred the laissez-faire winemaking approach, but in general, is that what you want to happen?
I think stylistic. I'm a big Riesling guy, and I'm not a West Coast Riesling guy. I'm from New York. And I think the Rieslings coming out of the Finger Lakes are fantastic, and a lot of the gentlemen, the people making wines in the Finger Lakes are all from Germany and second generation, first generation, and they don't want to work for their family in Germany, so they come to America and start their own thing.
Work for Hans Cornell,
and exactly, and they're just making lovely, lovely Rieslings, and 1/3 the price of a GG that you've got to buy from, $75-$100 fancy Riesling from Germany. You can get a wine that tastes just like that for $30 in the Finger Lakes.
Wow.
And here, on the West Coast, I just don't feel that we're there.
Well, if you're talking about Sundial Riesling or from Fetzer or something, maybe. But that's interesting. Tomorrow I have a podcast with Nova Kadamart. She's an MW. She's making wine in the Finger Lakes.
She moved. She was out here working for Mondavi.
Mondavi, yeah.
And now she's doing Finger Lake work.
Yeah. So
up there.
Is that something that's happening? Because, one, you said two important things. One, Riesling, there's two things that I think are.
Well, Paul Hobbs just put in a big I think I don't want to misstate it. It's a couple hundred acres on the west side of Seneca, and he's doing, it's called Hillock and Hobbs, and he's doing a big Riesling program there.
Is it happening? What about here? You see a bump in Riesling production?
No, and I think that's only because, the market has decided that Riesling should cost X amount of dollars, and you get all these people out here that are used to making, I can get $40 for a median Cabernet, but I can make the greatest Riesling in the world and I can get 22. And so people look at that and go, how do I do that? What's funny in the bulk market right now is whites there's nothing hot right now in the bulk market, but if you want to think of anything that's warm anyway, it's white wines. Reds are a little slow right now in the bulk market. I just read in Ciati, there's 9 million gallons of Cabernet sitting out there right now.
Really?
Yeah, not sold.
Jotted the broker. They're the brokers.
Yeah, big brokerage. So, but whites are a little bit hotter right now. People are drinking, temperature wines that people are drinking at colder temperatures, refrigerator, wine cellars, et cetera.
What do you think drives that? This is the fascinating part of the business that I've never figured out, and I, stood the tasting room for 35 years, and that is my tasting day, Tuesday, was sort of a litmus or a temperature gauge of what's going on in the marketplace. Whatever was for sale came through the door. And how, do you have any idea why?
I wish I knew, right? I wouldn't be sitting here making wine for others.
I guess that was a silly question because we all know we wouldn't be here either.
And I think that's one of the reasons we diversified in 2018. We decided to be not just in the wine business. So here we have a whole separate two buildings that are devoted to alternative beverages. So we make RTDs, we make cocktails, we make ciders, we make seltzers, we make agave wine margaritas, we make all sorts of things. And the beauty of that is, as the wine business, or we have fires, or we have smoke, or we have rain, or we have earthquakes, earthquakes I think would affect either business. But as we have, wine is an ag product. A lot of these other things are not. And so by being able to have these other silos, these other business, these other things, we're very diversified. Mm-hmm. So if something happens on one side, we can focus on the other. So it's interesting to be making these other. We've also, the winemakers at the beginning were really against it, right? They wanted to make wine. They're winemakers. And I had to convince them that, look, it's still biology and chemistry. Just get excited about the science of it. And this is what a lot of people are drinking. The kids are drinking a lot of these Tetra Pak products and canned products and small bottle products because they're on boats and picnicking and hiking and they're active. And we need to be thinking about that. And so we can package. We don't do Tetra Packing, but we do virtually everything else.
I'm not buying it. I've heard this conversation with many canned products, and the young woman who bottled 375, like that's the first person ever to do that, into single serve or a 200 or whatever.
Which, by the way, a 375 single serve, that's
it's for us, it's minimum.
That's a lush.
But there's not that many people hiking and drinking RTD or canned wines going up Mount Olympus. I'm sorry.
Not canned wines, canned beverages.
Canned beverage. Okay,
right.
So like my two arguments are: one is if you're so millennial and you're worried about natural and biodynamic and what you're putting in your body, then why are you drinking White Claw? Because that stuff's full of crap.
Well, right. So it's not just White Claw. We have people making, both full alcohol cocktails and low alcohol cocktails, all natural ingredients. Yeah. Like we're brewing their tea. We're infusing, we're making mint extracts. Right from the base, we're making every little component.
You distilling those things here?
No, we don't distill.
You're buying the extracts?
No, we'll add it to grape brandy or whatever and make it tincture or whatever out of these things.
And so are these kinds of products, since we're into it now, because we were talking about packaging anyway, and I have this romantic thing about wine, and so canned wines and ready to drink cocktail, that stuff to me is just a packaging play, and it may come and go, or it may not, right? But you're doing that here, which is pretty fascinating. You don't see too many canned lines around.
No, it's unusual. We were one of the first. Right at the same time, there was another company across the street that was doing some canning, and then they moved over to Sonoma. They've since closed down. and I think part of that is all they did was can.
Yeah.
Right. We actually make the product. So we bring in all the ingredients, and a lot of people don't want to do that. The heavy lifting in making these things is bringing in all the ingredients, making them, blending them, etc. And it's work. And a lot of the people that want to be in a commodity type business where they can just run their line as fast as they can and get the product in and get it out, they want it delivered finished. Maybe they'll filter it, maybe they won't. But here we do it from start to finish. And, when we make these agave wine cocktails, which is another tax play, by the way, because it's in a wine category, it's not hard, it's not grain, it's in a different tax category, a better tax category. So by using agave wine and making a margarita, it's marketed as a margarita, but it's made with agave wine. We'll have these clients ship up agave nectar that comes in totes at 85 bricks. We have to titrate it. Yeah, like it's syrup. We have to titrate it and ferment it and then make the rest of the beverage and ship it off to somebody who puts it in big bottles. We don't do the bottling on some of those projects.
So if I'm a winery in Napa and let's say I walk into a tasting room in Napa and that person's diversified into other things and I see a canned agave beverage or even
or bottles.
RTD, that could be branded here.
Yeah,
because they're not going to have a canning line or a bottling line for small bottles or anything like that.
Yeah, so the small bottles are different, right? Wine does much better in glass than it does in a can because cans have a liner. And shelf life on wines in a can are a year. Some of the beverages are a little longer. Some of the beverages can go a little longer. That just has to do with the components of the wine. You'll see wine. The box wines have been around forever.
Yep.
And we're putting in a 187 line, which we don't have yet, but it's going in at the end of the year. There's a lot of demand for glass, and this particular line does them in. The Voss water bottle, that kind of cylinder, nice-looking bottle. It looks like that, and so we're going to be doing 187, which is 6.4 ounces. That is actually. About 6 points, but that's actually a single serve. A 250 ml can is almost 1.7 glasses of wine. So that's not quite a single serve either.
No, not really. But
and so 187s are great for airlines and others where if you really want a single serve and the package weighs nothing, you're putting all that stuff up into the air, can's a great solution because it doesn't sit around long. It's a single serve. You can hand it to the passenger. And when it's empty, the can doesn't weigh anything.
When I was every summer I would do a can special, and in 2019 I found 5 really great. There were different brands.
Yeah.
Most of that stuff was we'll put it in the can. Just put some sulfur in it and put it in the can. That was what most of it tasted like.
Yeah.
But then there was some appellated stuff and some varietal, and there was some vintage stuff.
Oh, there's some plonk out there for sure.
And then the next year, COVID hit, and I asked for the samples again, and it was a year later, but nobody made anything new because COVID hit. So I was tasting the same samples as the year before, and you could tell clearly that they were different.
And that's a can gets damaged a little bit, then the liner gets pierced. Now all of a sudden the aluminum's reacting with the wine, and you're done. Our legacy business, our wine business, no one's putting Napa Valley Cabernet in a can. No. I mean, that's not what it is. You're putting in a fun white blend, putting some bubbles in it, and it's 5% alcohol, and it's a quick cold. It sits in a bucket of ice, and it's a quick cold. How do you do? And great at concerts, great at festivals. Think about how much easier it is to serve that. You go up to a thing, and they can hand you a can, and somebody didn't want a beer. They didn't want a cider. They wanted a bubbly wine.
Are those canning lines faster? Because I used to sell copiers back in the day to Angela's Can, and they used to make the machines that made soda pop for 7-Up and Sprite. So they're pretty fast.
The rotary ones are lightning, right? Yeah. They can be 400 or 500 cans a minute. Our line is much slower. It's about 110 cans a minute.
Are they bottom fillers then?
No. They fill from the top, and then the lid is applied, but canning is just like bottling. It's a necessary. It's a packaging is a necessary evil in the wine business.
So why did you think that the bin to bottle needed to invest in that?
It wasn't a massive investment to start. We walk before we run when we try something new. I started with one line, and just to see what we would do. But at the same time, we had people come to us that were having trouble. Our first client in alternative beverage was somebody that was having trouble figuring out how to ferment agave nectar. They were shipping, they were buying agave wine from Mexico and shipping it up. And they were paying a fortune. 6,000 gallons is all you can get in a truck. They were growing, and they wanted to figure out how to ship the nectar and do it here. And they went to a bunch of places who couldn't figure it out, and we did. And we were just lucky.
In the lab.
Yeah.
Basically.
And we were just lucky that client has grown into, one of the largest RTDs in the country.
Wow. The RTD thing, too, is another interesting, fascinating thing. But that's not distilled, though. This is now fermented still.
That's fermented. Right.
So really, it's an RTD if it's fermented, you call it an
RTD? RTD is just ready to drink. So remember,
drink,
people, there's all sorts of formulas. You can have a fermented product that you can add distilled products to. You could have finished distilled products.
Right.
The science, there's all these funny acronyms. OTS stands for other than standard, which is a diluted grain distilled spirit, and you can ship that. And there's all these unusual things in that space.
Still call it under certain licenses. You can still do it.
That's right. It's still wine, right? So there's people making orange wine, which is from orange peel, not orange wine like the Poser orange wine. Yes, the orange wine from like orange peels. And so they distill the peels and all the throwaway oranges, and that ends up becoming, again, 180 proof distillate that ends up going into another product.
Wow.
And it's all flavored with all these other things. So all you're getting is the alcohol from that. We don't do any of that. We ship some of that in. But again, it's a completely separate business from our wine business.
Right, sure.
Separate equipment, separate everything.
You see the number of requests growing, and I see the shelf at, let's just take canned wine for a second, in RTD, at the market. It's sort of expanding. It's kind of pushing some of the imports off of the shelf at Vaughn's Market. Are you seeing an increase in questions?
Look, the other thing that's kind of cool about it is it gives the legacy wine people some options. For example, we have this 80-20 program that was just kind of written up where we basically partner with growers that can't sell their fruit. And this year, there are going to be some growers out there that are either not under contract and haven't sold their fruit, or are below their bricks, or have a mildew issue, whatever. They've got some fruit that may or may not sell, or may not make contract, or may not be taken. And so we do a program. If we think it's a good vineyard and we think the fruit is good, we'll bring the fruit in and we'll make the wine for free. We'll charge them nothing up front, but we become a partner in the project. So we'll make the wine, and then we'll go to the bulk market and sell it as soon as we can, January or February. Mm-hmm. And we'll sell that wine. We'll make it well here. This doesn't go to the Central Valley where it's going into, valley bins going into giant vats with no sorting, no nothing. This is made in small fermenters, destemmed on Palanques, wine made well. We'll make a good quality wine, which in the bulk market is all it takes to sell it, because there's so much plonk out there on the bulk market that when you make a good wine, it rises above all the others. Once we sell it, we get an agreed upon price back, or agreed upon fee for all the winemaking we did, and then we split the profits 80-20, 80 to the grower, 20 to us. We've been doing this since 2008, and it's been super helpful. So this year, somebody came to me with, 20 tons of Carnero Chard, and
wow.
And they wanted to, they were going to sell it in the bulk market, and I know this person well, and I said, well, have you thought about maybe pulling off part of it, and we'll put it into one of our bright tanks, which is how you carbonate. And we have different levels of carbonation. We can go all the way up to 4 volumes, which is like 60 PSI.
Wow.
And let's just take part of it, put it into 187 cans, and you can sell this sparkling Chard to an airline or wherever, or just to whoever, because he has good distribution. And just do it as a little test run to see if it'll fly. And it's small, 500 cases, 600 cases. And we may do it. We'll see. If not, it'll just go to bulk. The one problem with that process is if he wants to sell it on the bulk market, we need to make it a juicy Chardonnay. But if we want to sparkle it, we got to pick it early, right? So you got to make a decision now. Are we going to pick some of it for a sparkling, or are we going to make it all for a bulk?
Why is there plonk? This was the argument I made to many customers when the Wine of the Month Club was growing, and that was, look, there's plonk. Let's call it, like you said, there's plonk out there, and somebody puts it in the bottle somewhere. I mean, somebody bottles it,
Yeah.
or they blend it with something else and bottle it. But you can't really dilute it down so much that you don't taste the plunk. And so, why does that happen? Is it just?
I think we're over. There's certain varietals that we just have too many of, and what will happen is there's lots of things you can do to that wine. You can concentrate it, remove water. You can, of course, it hurts your yield, and it's an expensive process to remove water. So you're de-alking. You can remove VA, volatile acidity. You can do lots of things. But ultimately, if you're, the wine's made in the vineyard. If you're in the Central Valley and you are growing in very hot conditions and you don't have water, the fruit is the fruit. And it can be pruned. It can be, depending on the vineyard, there can be all sorts of issues. Well, the farmer is the farmer. He gets what he can get for it. If he can get 600 a ton, somebody will buy it. And they end up with a bulk wine thinking, there's always that next sucker, if you will, that's going to buy the wine. Or they're going to put it out there, and in a $6, $7 wine, it might sell after they do their tricks to it. On the bulk market, usually the wine for sale has not been fixed. It's wine that was made, and then you have to get it and fix it. And we do that here. We will get bulk wine where people will stretch a brand or whatever. And again, this isn't for Napa Valley high-end wines. This is for somebody doing a second label that needs, they may buy some Petit Verdot, Malbec, Cab Franc, some other Bordeaux varietals they need for blending they're not great, but they're good. And then they'll tweak them and they'll get their blend right. And it might go into a $25, $30 bottle of wine. There's a market for that.
Just to stretch it a little bit.
Yeah.
If I wanted to make a Napa Valley cab right now, or California, let's split up a California cab and a Napa Valley cab. What per gallon? What would I need to pay
from the bulk market?
Yeah, for something that's that somebody raises that glass and says, "Well, this is pretty good wine."
Yeah, so the only thing that's holding up on the bulk market right now, in any really strong way, is Napa Valley Cab.
Okay,
it's actually still about a little over $40 a gallon, depending. You're somewhere between 30 and 45.
Okay, so $30 a gallon. Let's just call it for that.
Yeah, and that's oaked. That's not sitting in tank. That's wine that's been oaked.
That's ready to bottle.
Right, and now remember that wine you could have sold some years for $95 a gallon. That wine right now is selling for, depending the year and depending the wine, but Hillside, Hillside Cab, is somebody going to get? If you're talking about outliers, yeah, can somebody sell something fantastic, in Stag's Leap Hillside for $85 a gallon? I'm sure, but that is not. That is a.
So how about a California cab that's palatable?
It's under 15 right now. 15. There's a lot of wines out there. And again, you're going to have to taste through a lot of crap to get something good. But you could probably find some wines out there for $15 a gallon that are drinkable.
Okay, so $40 a gallon would be $100 a case, and $15 a gallon would be around $45.
Just for the wine.
Yeah, just for the
wine.
$20
a case for packaging.
Right, and then you got to market it.
Yeah.
And that's the part that...
Yeah, right. So if you're at 100 on the wine and 20 in there, you're at 120. You want a Keystone.
You got a Keystone out of that. So Keystone,
that's
for the
240.
Listeners, double it.
Yeah, so that's 240. So, and then you're already at, 20 a bottle.
And you haven't even done anything yet.
No.
You haven't moved it. You haven't taken it to the distributor. You haven't done anything.
Right. And distributors aren't taking new brands unless there's some reason, right? If a celebrity's behind it or there's a reason it can move.
So that's the important
They're
part.
not moving it, as you said at the beginning.
Yeah, they're not.
I'm not getting attention from my distributor.
So you have to go.
They're delivering Tito's.
Yeah, exactly. They don't care. Well, I talk about this all the time. When my father owned the shop in the 70s, the guy who was selling Jim Beam would come in and say, "Oh, by the way, I have the Mondavi cab. You're going to put on the shelf because wine was secondary. It was the Jim Beam that led the sale call, right? Then the wine was different, and now that's hopefully a little bit different. But the important part of this, because I think the listeners don't always understand this concept. And that is, okay, I've got this wine. I need to sell it for at least $20 a bottle. I haven't even done anything yet. I haven't given it to a distributor.
No marketing.
But you've got to put it. You've got to come up with the placements. You've got to go out and shake the tree and then go to the distributor and say, hey, I have these 100 placements.
Right.
So you're guaranteed these sales as long as your salespeople show up, and then you can grow the brand for me.
Yeah, and we didn't even put all the costs in, right? We didn't put in any licensing compliance. We didn't even put my fee in.
Yeah.
We got $100 a gallon, $100 a gallon, $20 on the packaging. I got to get paid to put it in the bottle.
Yeah, that's right.
Filter it, and then you've got compliance and shipping and everything. So before you know it, right? That's why the heavens open when you can sell direct to consumer and get all the margin, right? And that's hard to do.
Well, then
It's easy to do when you're not easy, but if you're a 1,000-case brand and you've gotten some notoriety, maybe you can move 1,000 cases if you're lucky. But you start getting any bigger than that, and you're not going to sell that direct. Not a chance. It's got to start on premise and then work its way into stores.
We came up here the month before COVID hit, and we sat with Sarah Clairman from the Register. She was the beat writer for wine.
Okay.
I thought it was going to be this article about me. I don't know why it wasn't. But she was asking.
How dare she?
I know. So we were asking questions. She was asking us questions like, how are we going to get these wineries to embrace, online marketing to a bigger degree, because the tasting rooms are going to be shut down.
Right.
And if you didn't have a robust DTC or digital marketing presence, you probably are in big trouble. And I thought to myself, isn't that interesting? Some farmer, some guy or woman that started this farm, and they're loving the lifestyle, and they're living in Napa, and they come to the tasting room and talk to the people, shuts down. They're not used to having somebody sit in front of a monitor with the chat bell going off and hoping to answer a chat. That's not going to happen.
No. Look, selling wine and really all adult beverages is hard, right? And that is one of the reasons we diversified, and we did it in a clever way. I could have, on the alternative beverage side, I could have just bought tanks, not fermenters, but just tanks, and done all the mixing. I didn't do that. Every single tank we have here is a fermenter. So as wine picks up, all those tanks can be making wine, not cocktail. So the new building we just finished, 30,000 square foot building, it has a flex wall in it. I can move it to the left and do more packaging. I can move it to the right and store more barrels.
Wow.
It's humidified, it's temperature controlled.
Brilliant.
So this entire building, 50 some odd thousand square feet, can flex in either direction between wine, cocktails, agave, whatever is in favor. And
so there's a technology and construction that allows you to do that.
That's right. Drains, wastewater, all that stuff's the same. But for fermenting wine, you need fermenters, which requires tasting valves and racking valves and 2 doors, pump over devices. Well, if you're blending a cocktail, you don't need any of those things. So those tanks are way cheaper. I spent the money to buy fermenters because I didn't know which way the market was going to go. Exactly.
You can store in it, and you can...
That's exactly right. And we can shift the barrel room. We're at 50-50 right now. Half the building is barrels, half the building is packaging.
Wow.
And that will move. It takes us a couple days to move the wall. And it's R-rated, so not R-rated like a movie. No, R-rated, temperature-rated, and we can move that wall based on where we need the space.
That's fascinating. I've never heard of that technology.
And we're the only ones doing it.
Yeah. Well, because you need to be flexible.
We do.
As the building is, but you need to. That's what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
And these types of packaging ideas are going to ebb and flow. Now they got thinner bottles coming out, and they're trying to reduce the weight. And I'm still the purist. I really think that wine should be in glass. This young girl I did the other day, I said, do you think that Lafite Rothschild's going to be in it? She goes, absolutely. One day it's going to be a can. I'm like,
no. But it's like, what is your closure? Everyone thinks different. Remember when Plum Jack went to what did they do? They did not a crown cap. They did a twist off.
What's it called?
When Plum Jack, they just did
the fancy one,
not the glass one. They just did twist off.
Yeah, really.
Back when they were $200 wine in a twist off bottle. Our line will do bar top, which is the wood, the cork attached to the wood. It'll do crown cap, which is like Coca-Cola.
Which I don't understand.
It'll do, it's a good seal.
For RTD, I guess.
Yeah, but there's people that were doing like 1 liter bottles of a blended white, blended rosé, and blended red, and we're doing a crown cap. So we bought, it wasn't that much more for this multi-capper to do all these things. So it does crown cap, twist off, a screw cap is what I meant to say.
Stelvin.
Screw cap, glass closure, and then of course cork finish. And so again, if our clients want to try something different, they can do that.
That's
here.
Smart. A little known fact, and because Sandra's here, her uncle Art, who passed away a few years ago, who invented the straw that bends and the spoon straw. He owns the patent of those.
Why are you working?
Yeah, no, he sold it all to Coca-Cola. And when he sold it to Coca-Cola in 1985 or 84, Actually, it's probably a little before that, the late 70s, late 70s. He was on the team to create this Taylor Sellers bar cap, which had a synthetic cork in it. Now you're talking 1985.
Wow.
So there was a foam cork in 1985 that he built the machine that assembled the wood cap to the foam, and that's went into the Taylor Sellers wine. So they were
way ahead of their time,
and they were beautiful. None of the stuff that we tried to use here.
Yeah.
In the 90s that failed miserably.
Yeah.
Until they figured it out. And he figured it out.
Well, now so many people are using the engineered cork now that the patent ran out with deream and all that.
Right, yes.
So many people are using engineered cork, guaranteed no TCA. And the market has embraced it. It's not like everybody has to see a natural cork. Are there still people doing 1.75 or 2-inch natural corks with no inclusions? Of course there are. But more and more, you open a bottle of wine, how often are you now seeing engineered cork?
I see them all the time, but the consumer doesn't know the difference.
No.
They don't see it.
They don't care.
There's the one person that looks at it when they don't even know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
It smells like cork.
Yeah, that's right.
We're already on like 50 minutes. But I did want to ask you about the celebrity wine stat before we finish this. We'll do it again one day. Huge uptick in the celebrity wine business years ago was, skim off the top, I'll take 20% or 30% and do it. Now it seems like there's more awareness in the celebrity ranks of decent wine and that they actually sort of participate in this. Have you seen the uptick?
I think that's right. And I think it's due to buyers that are buying celebrity wines want authenticity, right? It's got to be authentic. If you are somebody slapping your name on it and you're not involved, that they sniff that out.
Yeah.
And they want to know that you're a wine drinker, that you know what you like, and you're going, you're trying to make a wine that you prefer. And, there's so many examples, right, of people that have, it's not just in wine, but spirits on the celebrity side, tequila, right? Is there a celebrity that doesn't?
Do you think that's true that he sold it for $1 billion?
Which one, Clooney?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it, and they're still in.
How do they do that?
They knew what they could ramp it up, and I think they're still, I don't know if they're still partners, but they're still marketing. They're still in all the commercials. So either that was negotiated, and but it's remarkable.
How is there room for more? I guess I wasn't done with this conversation. How is it? Because I do want to talk about your spirits line.
Steph Curry, right? He's had a wine brand that he just sold, and that was in the news about a month ago, that he and his wife sold their little wine brand to Constellation.
Yeah, right.
I think it was called Domaine Curry or something like that. And now he's got a whiskey.
What doesn't make them aficionados in winemaking,
no,
whiskey making.
No, they like
but it's this
they slap their name on
social networking. And
Bob Dylan is selling a lot of whiskey, and
he's 3 quarters. He's 3/4.
Yeah, he's building his own distillery, and so I think some people get the start, and then they really get the bug, and they really get into it. There aren't that many celebrities that own their own winery.
How are the margins?
Margins in spirits are much better than they are in wine.
Okay.
But you have the same issue. You don't grow a spirits brand in stores, or people to find whiskeys. They've had it in a bar, and the bartender says, "This is really a great rye. This is a great bourbon," and then they start looking and asking for it, and then the stores start getting it. It's hard, and it takes a long time. Celebrities can kind of jumpstart that.
Well, it's cutthroat at the premium pour level for Southern Youngs and RNDC. Now the RNDC Youngs and what's that first beverage? What it's called? They're battling it out. That's in the trenches. Yeah. I mean, that's really in the trenches.
But if you're a distributor and you're not sure, right, of who's going to win and who's not, celebrities are easy, right? If celebrity comes along and go, well, it's better than not having a celebrity. So maybe, Sarah Jessica Parker has a big following. Let's start buying her wine. I don't know what her wine's like, but my understanding is she's selling a bunch of it. Because all the people that like Sex and the City are buying her wine. And again, I don't know the numbers, but the trades are saying that she's moving a little bit of wine.
It's a natural organic thing.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. That's
the other woman?
Charlie's Angel, the girl that was in I forgot her name. She was almost making an orange wine, I think. But she partnered. There was somebody that partnered with Sarah Jessica Parker, which, again, it was smart. I think that she's not doing the whole thing. She openly admits that I don't know how to make wine, but I know what I like.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the tastings, and I help decide the direction the wine's going. Well, that's authentic.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to have a degree in winemaking.
No.
There was something else I had a thought of. besides splintered wine? Splintered.
Yeah,
splintered. What's it
Splinter
called?
spirits.
Splintered spirits.
So we started with straight edge bourbon, and then added Slaughterhouse American whiskey. Bourbon is a sipping bourbon at 84 proof. The Slaughterhouse is 88, which is better for. That's a slightly less expensive. It's like 35 a bottle instead of 55. The beauty of that is bartenders like a little more alcohol when they're making a mixed drink. At 84, it's a little light for a cocktail. So if you're making a cocktail, a little more alcohol is helpful. It stands up better. And then rye, traditionally, not always, is a little higher. So the rye's at 90.
But alcohol content in distilled spirits has been pressing up. For the last 10 years or so.
Well, especially with the cast strength, people selling all the cast strength stuff, and Woodford and all these guys selling these specialty bottles, and people lap it up.
We had an event at our house not too long ago, and I came home when work was tough that day. I forgot what it was, but I had a couple Manhattans that I made with Peerless 100 proof. Apparently, I gave a speech that night. I don't remember.
How'd it go?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I got it recorded out. This has been a fascinating conversation. We haven't even touched all the subjects that we wanted to talk about, but so glad you could take the time today and chat with us, and we hope to do it again. Are you ever in L.A.? Do you ever come down? Yeah,
I love L.A. My daughter is down there. Oh, okay. Actually works for Gary Vee.
Really?
Yeah. She started on the Constellation. She worked for,
what's the name of the brand?
VaynerMedia. It helps with a lot of the Forbes 400 social media campaigns and all. So she works. She is now with. I forgot what company she's currently. I think it's Indeed. I think she's helping with the Indeed account, but she was on the Constellation account for a while. So they had Woodbridge, and
he sold a brand to Constellation.
Empathy. Yeah. So I was part of that.
Oh, were you? Okay.
We made all that here.
Really?
We grew it to 30,000 cases.
Wow.
Sold it. I was a small partner.
Yeah.
He had two other partners, and we had some celebrity partners in that brand. And we sold it to Constellation after a year.
Yeah.
We had a white, a rosé, and a red.
Right.
All blended. We did everything. We actually did the vineyard. We selected the vineyards. We made the crop pick, the picking decisions. Mm-hmm. We did all the winemaking here. And ran everything by Gary and his team, and
he's a very knowledgeable wine guy. I'll never take that away from him.
No, he knows his stuff.
He really does.
Yeah, he's got a good palate.
Yeah, fascinating, John. Thank you so much for the time.
Not at all. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Wine Talks with Paul Kalamkarian. Don't forget to subscribe because there's more great interviews on their way. And folks, have a great time out there in the wine world. Cheers.